here have heard of us at all? Wow! Oh, great. Well, I think I'm here to do a presentation to you about our work, kind of a historical kind of overview of what we've been doing and how we got to where we are now. I'm also going to be doing a solo sound noise performance thingy tomorrow at 4:30 in the afternoon. Anyway, yeah, I think that we fit into the conference here because our work is a technological, artistic response to all these developments in technology and media that create this new culture and world we live in, and then we end up using some of that new technology to make stuff about the stuff that we're reacting to. And of course, end up bumping into things like copyright law and stuff, but I'll get to that later. The kind of stuff that Negativland's been doing for 32 years, we're a collective I mean, it's still the same guys, believe it or not. Never expected we would still be together after all these years. And nowadays, even though the kind of work we do is just as illegal as it ever was, we seem to have achieved some weird kind of aura of respectability, which I don't quite understand. But I've even been asked to do things like speak in Capitol Hill. I've spoken to the staff of senators and congressmen and all kinds of crazy stuff like that, to try and say that there really are some new directions that culture is going in that we need to allow it to go in. And we really can't have these corporate moneyed interests calling all the shots the way they have it. It's really not such a good idea. I'm sure you all know this. The kind of work that Negativland did, and I'm going to be showing you examples of this throughout my presentation, I don't personally feel really as transgressive anymore. I think there was an era where it really truly once was. I think taking things from the mass media around you, the corporate culture, the pop cultural world, and cutting them up and reusing them, I really feel there was an era where it really felt like an edgy, transgressive thing to do. I think now the collage has passed over into a mainstream artistic practice, into, you know, just teenage kids just grab things and make funny YouTube videos out of stuff that they took off of, you know, YouTube or whatever. So things have really changed. The laws haven't changed, but the cultural practices have, and that's how things always change, right? As we always see that there's always a grassroots, bottom-up kind of effort to change anything with laws and society, cultural things. If you look at women voting, civil rights issues, slavery, all of those things, you have generations of people struggling, and it's always power, the top-down, you know, parts of power. They're always the last to finally concede. If you look at it in those terms, the shifts we're seeing happen around reuse of intellectual property are in fact historically happening really fast, I think. Well, when Negativland started out, we loved making funny noises and strange sounds. We liked pop songs, and we just loved the world around us, the noises and things that were found in our environment. Well, I'm a middle-class suburban kid, so my environment was the sprinklers, oscillating in the yard, my parents in the kitchen baking, the dog barking, the television set on, all 4 channels of it. And so those things just very naturally made its way into Negativland's work. There was something really appealing about taking things out of their intended context and ripping them out and reusing them in a new way. There was something about that. As I said, I don't feel like this is a transgressive thing anymore, but 32 years ago, there was something about that just felt very exciting and new and different. And what we very quickly discovered was something that I think there's plenty of people in the audience tonight who are old enough to know what reel-to-reel recording tape is, right? Yes? Raise your hand. Yes! Well, and razor blades. And you can take that recording tape, and you can take your razor blade, and you can cut the tape up and rearrange it and loop it one end to the other. And we discovered it, you know, this at the age of 16 or 17, this was a revelation. My God, sound can be plastic and you can manipulate it. And of course now you can do this, you know, in 2 seconds with the computer. And the commands cut and paste are in the computer. And in fact, I feel like the computer was just a technology that just screamed out
the need to appropriate with it, to collage, to cut up, to mash up. I mean, it's just built to do it, right? But before the term sampling existed, before there was digital ways to do this, we were doing all this with analog cut up. And not worrying about who owned what we used, because who would care about what we were doing? We just liked, as I said, the repurposing of things was somehow just very, very exciting for us to do. So I'm going to go to a short clip to show you an example of some of our earlier work. And all of the films I'm going to show you today, they're not made when the audio was made. These are actually, all the films are us going back into our old projects and reusing our own, approaching our own work as if it was found material, and collaborating with new contemporary experimental filmmakers to make different short films. And there's a lot more that I'm going to show you today. But this first piece is called Truth in Advertising, and we took a call in to a talk radio show. Of course, this was all done, the audio was done with razor blades. And it's a call into a talk radio show, and every time the host wants to hang up on the caller, we could edit it so that the next caller he goes to is the caller he was just talking to. You know, he gets caught in some funny kind of loop. And by repetition of phrases and kind of teasing out some different kind of meanings in the language, we were able to kind of get at something that I think is an interesting subject for collage in a piece of audio and film. So this is called Truth in Advertising, and it was made in collaboration with the filmmaker James Towning from Columbus, Ohio.
This is Pennywise. Joan, you're next.
This is Sue.
Hi Sue, how can I help?
Jim, I really have a problem with impulse buying. I never have money left for anything.
Why?
Jim, I really have a impulse problem with buying.
Okay.
Buying anything.
Wait a minute. Go ahead and use some of that money there. Bring some happiness.
Jim, I really have a problem. Jim, I never have money left for impulse buying.
A lot of people have that problem. Pay cash.
Good idea. I feel we really need to buy right away.
After all, money is only paper and metal till you put it to use.
I never have money left.
But you've already decided to buy.
Impulse.
I really think it'll help.
Good idea.
Oh, thanks. Okay, let's go to line 4. This is Pennywise. I'm Jim Phillips, and your name is...
Bob.
Hi, Bob. What can I do for you?
I get confused by all the claims being commercials.
This is Pennywise. Line 6. You're on. And your name is...
Bob.
Caller number 5. You're on the air with Pennywise. I'm Jim Phillips.
I get confused by all the claims being commercials.
Let's go to line 7 on Pennywise. Hi, I'm Jim Phillips.
Bob. Commercials. I get confused by all the claims being commercials.
Oh, well, listen. I think your first responsibility is to yourself and your family.
The what?
Thanks for the call. Hello, you're on Pennywise with Jim Phillips, and you are...
Bob.
Okay, let's go to line 4. This is Pennywise. I'm Jim Phillips, and your name is...
Bob. Commercials.
Hello, caller?
I get confused by all the claims being commercials.
And your name is...
Bob.
Hi, Bob. What can I do for you?
The what?
Go ahead.
I get confused by all the claims being commercials.
You sound frustrated.
Because I am.
Well, my kids and I, for example, love to build things with scrap lumber.
The what?
All right. Thanks for the call, Carl.
Bob.
This is Pennywise. Line 6. You're on.
Bob.
Yeah, Barb.
Bob.
Go ahead.
Claims being commercials.
Yeah.
I get confused.
Why?
I get commercials confused.
I can imagine.
The what?
Well, many religious people follow the biblical plan of tithing. You may want to visit with your clergy about it, but of course...
The what? The what? Commercials. I get confused by all the claims.
And your name is...
Bob.
That's a tough one. A lot of people have that problem.
The what?
Truth in advertising.
I get confused.
Advertising, though, can be a really good source of information because of the truth in advertising policy.
The what?
Because of the truth in advertising policy.
The what?
Truth in advertising.
The what?
Truth in advertising. Truth in advertising. You see, the law requires advertisers to tell the truth.
The what?
The truth. The truth. To tell the truth. Truth in advertising.
Good point.
So listen carefully to the wording of an ad.
The what?
The truth in advertising.
The what?
Well, then you have to decide if honesty goes both ways, right? After all, so this is Pennywise. You're on the air. Hi, Bob. What can I do for you?
Yeah, Jim, this is Charlie.
Okay.
I've got a moral question for you. The what?
Wait a minute. Thanks for the call, Bob.
This is Charlie. I've got a moral question for you.
Well, that's a matter for your own conscience, Charlie.
I figured you'd say something like that.
All right. Why don't you give it a try this year?
Okay, but don't never catch it.
Well, thanks for calling, Charlie.
Thanks.
This is Pennywise. Line 6. You're on.
Yeah, Jim, this is Charlie.
Question that I get asked a lot of times about our work for people who have followed is where do you find all this stuff? And there's no, easy trick to it. I guess nowadays, of course, you can do things like search on the internet with tags attached to it and stuff. But for much of our career, it's just been spending unhealthy amounts of time in record stores and listening to radio and watching TV and just recording everything. And you just have to get tons and tons of material to which you then find the little gems here and there to pick out. And the other place that we end up with incredible resource is our weekly radio show. We've had a radio show on since 1981 called Over the Edge. It's on KPFA in Berkeley at midnight. And it's a live cut-up collage radio show. Very, very, very live, very cut up. And we use a lot of radio station cart machines, which is now a dead technology, but it allows you to do some really interesting live tape cut-up in a way that would be pretty hard to do with a computer. Every week we pick a theme. So the show might be about advertising or the moon or dirt or fire or copyright we collect all the material, we bring stuff in, we write scripts, we have characters, we bring in songs, we find anything relates to the theme, and we do this improvised mix for 3 hours. And telephone callers can call in and contribute in any way they want. If we just think they're uninteresting, we just hang up on them. But it's been on for so long that people know that they can call up and contribute with their own noises, sounds, audio things that relate to the concept that week. And one of the subjects we've done quite a few episodes on over the years is the ever popular topic of guns. And the radio show can act as a kind of a laboratory for us to try out new ideas and end up realizing that has potential to make a finished studio recording project out to release. And so we ended up deciding that there was enough good material here related to guns that we ended up making a project which we called Guns. And ended up making this an audio track and collaborated many years later with a filmmaker from Chicago named Peter Neville to make this piece, what I'll show you. It's called Guns. We weren't being too imaginative on the titling of that, I must say. But this, for me, I actually like this better as a video than I do as just audio. And I think that the video added a whole lot of really nice layers of meaning to the whole thing. And I think that our earliest collage was really pretty pure surreal dada, just goofy weirdness. But over the years, we started realizing that you really could use collage to talk about things. You could use the mass media to talk about the mass media. You could use, information, corporate information technology materials to talk about the very things you're appropriating. And that's why I think for us, collage has remained incredibly interesting over all these years. We do film collage. We actually have an art show we just that opened in Los Angeles just last week at a gallery in LA called La Luz de Azus. And in the last 5 years, we've started exhibiting our visual art, which, interestingly enough, also ends up being collage as well. Not by intention, but it just seems, we just all seem to be a bunch of guys who just really love to find things. And if any of you do a collage, you know that you start to just develop this sort of sixth sense of being able to look at a thing or hear a thing, see a thing, and say, oh, I know what you could do with that, instead of what it is right now. And it's almost like an alchemical transformation moment that happens when you do that kind of thing. And so anyway, let's know this next piece. It's a little longer. Dominic is doing the sound there. This is about 8 minutes. And again, this is called Guns. And we composed the music, didn't steal it.
Guns.
Well done.
Hey, Pa! Look!
Guns.
Oh!
Guns. Guns.
Attractive target. Attractive target.
The sun is gone.
Gosh, what excitement. Gee, let's get out of here. Don't move for that door, either of you. That's your constable. Where? I don't know. I can't see nothing. You don't have to see me. Something's on you two. We're gonna have a little talk. Just sit back and wait. Stacy and I can wait as long as you can. We can't stop. Can't we, Stacy? We can't stop. I got your harmonica, Jingle. Might as well have a little music while we're waiting. Harmonica? We can't stop. Oh, sure thing, Bill. Something happy.
Quaker Puff Rice Sparkies and Quaker Puff Wheat Sparkies. Those delicious, nutritious breakfast cereals shot from guns. Yes, shot from guns.
Can't stop. Get up in there. We'll just sit back and wait.
Bursting forth with gigantic grains of goodness.
They want to shoot and we'll give them their money's worth. Come on. We'll just sit back and wait. Guess you can start on the harmonica now, Jingles.
All right.
Better put that fancy gun in your hand. You might need it.
All right. I'll take my gun.
Now we're gonna have that talk.
My money.
See, in this world, there's two kinds of people, my friend. Those with loaded guns, those who dig. You dig.
Well, the difference between justice and murder.
He's coming out, man! Keep pushing!
Gosh, what excitement. Go ahead, load up and shoot. I was right there listening, and I just couldn't leave till I heard both the stories.
Time sure flies. Do you only know how to play, or do you know how to shoot?
I'm gonna kill you with this one bullet if you try to take your gun. So, come on, take it. If you can. Hand it over. You'll be dead before you can draw the hammer back. That's so.
Hey, good shooting. Very good shooting.
Where'd you get that? Stay back and hold 2 shots. Now who wants the second one?
Well, you know music. And you can count. Bravo. All the way up.
Drop your gun.
Don't do it. He killed Sal, but we got 4 guns and he's only got 1 bullet left in that Derringer.
One's better than none.
We got him.
If that's true. 1, 2, 3.
All the way up to 6 in my head. Maybe faster.
1. When I say 3, draw. 1.
If you say 2, I'll kill you.
He counts 2.
Gee, I'll kill the next man who speaks.
Gosh, what excitement.
That wasn't Bill, that was me, Jingles, and don't break for that door again. Stop it, man. You can have the power if you like. He's dead man's back door.
You like my joke. We listen for harmony, little rocker.
That's fine shooting, just fine. You missed it. You crazy-eyed fool. Start closing in. I'll come in from this side. Hickok, Jingle, Sourdough, all of them vanishing into thin air. There's something downright weird about this whole thing.
And yeah, that's an older piece from the, I guess, early 90s of ours. Well, I mentioned earlier about being inspired by what we find, and I think it's an important point to make because we never set out, we don't ever pick a subject and say, well, let's find things that support this idea or that. It's always the other way around where you just bump into something and you get so excited by it that you want to make something out of it. And a really great example of that is this next story I'll tell you, which leads into some very interesting adventures for Negativland. One of our other founding members, Richard Lyons, was at a thrift store, and he found a record album that was called If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do? And this was a record by the Reverend S.S.W. Perkle from Louisiana, came out in 1971, and the Reverend it was a sermon where he was talking about how the communists were clearly about to take over the United States if we didn't do something now, and they were going to put us all into these concentration camps, and they were going to turn us into communists by broadcasting over a loudspeaker 17 hours a day the phrase, Christianity is stupid, communism is good, give up, give up, give up. Now, that's pretty interesting to take out of context from a Christian preacher, but what was really great and inspiring was it wasn't just what he was saying, it was how he said it. And he said, Christianity is stupid, Christianity is stupid, communism is good, give up, give up, give up. He's obviously the vocalist of a song, right? So we used our razor blades and dubbed the record to tape and cut that out. And he was talking about how we were all going to be brainwashed, so we decided to compose some kind of heavy, leaden, dirge-like rock thing that felt to us like brainwash music. And we ended up making a piece of music with the Reverend as the vocalist, which another one of our rather unimaginative titles, we ended up calling the piece Christianity is Stupid. Doesn't mean we were saying it's stupid. The Reverend was saying it. And in this particular case, we don't really back up the argument with anything. There it is. It's just laid out for you. And many years later, a film came out that kind of inspired us to revisit this work. And how many of you have seen that Australian fellow Mel's movie, Passion of the Christ? You're a bunch of godless, lefty, cyber, whatever you are. Yeah, I knew it. Well, I've watched the whole thing. And when it came out, I was thinking, wow, how many movies have been made about the life of Jesus Christ? Well, of course, it's one of the first narrative features ever made back in 1912. And we got a subscription to Netflix, and we got every single movie that had ever been made of every Jesus bioflick, and my friend knew how to crack the encryption software on the DVD, so we lifted all this. Every Jesus movie has the same scenes of him being beaten, whipped, flogged. There's always this shot where he's carrying a cross on his shoulder and he stumbles and falls, this kind of... Every one of those movies has that shot. And so we decided to kind of create this montage out of that and sort of edit it in the order of the Stations of the Cross and edit it kind of like an early 80s rock video so that everything's on the beat. You know how that's how they did it? So when the nail's being hammered in, like this. That was fun. And then we had to find footage for the communism is good part, and we actually found footage of Khrushchev playing badminton, Lenin petting a cat, Mao Zedong, happily waving to his minions, and Brezhnev bear hugging a cosmonaut, stuff like that. Happy communists. And sort of put this all together. And yeah, if there is a hell, I felt like, well, this is it. I'm definitely going there for making this piece. This is bad. So that's the next thing I want to show you. And in honor of our friend Mel's movie, we changed the title a little bit. But let's see what you think about this.
up and said, the loudspeaker spoke up and said, the loudspeaker spoke up and said, Christianity is stupid. 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 Communism is good. Communism is good. Communism is good. Communism is good. Give up. Did you hear that? Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up. Christianity is stupid. Christianity is stupid. Christianity is stupid. Christianity is stupid. Give up. Give up. Give up. Christianity is stupid. Christianity is stupid. Communism is good. Communism is good. Give up. Give up. Give up. From 5 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. From 5 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. From 5 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. Christianity is stupid. Christianity is stupid. Christianity is stupid. Christianity is stupid. From 5 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. Communism is good. Christianity is stupid. Christianity is stupid. Communism is good. Give up. Give up. 17 hours a day. Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up.
Shop as usual. And avoid panic buying.
Also, I think, I'm going to guess a lot of people in this room create stuff themselves, and I think that, a lot of times the act of making something is asking questions. What would it look like if I edited together every Jesus Bioflick movie ever made into a, and then the result, the work is the answer to the question. And it's coming up with good questions, but also I think in my case I see a lot of times there's what seems like a good question to start with, but then somehow you realize that's not as you get partway in and you realize actually there's this other question that's more interesting than that, and that was good as a starting place, but you suddenly maybe abandon ship and go a different direction because something else presents itself. And that certainly became true for Negativland, where we had to course correct in many interesting ways, especially to do with this song. Our first 3 records we put out all on our own. We learned a lot about how to, make and manufacture and distribute and promote our own records. But we also learned we pretty much hated running a record label. It's kind of awful. And we ended up working with a record label in Los Angeles called SST Records for a few years, and they put out this record of ours called Escape from Noise. I don't know if any of you heard it, a few of you. And this piece, Christianity is Stupid, was on there. To our shock, the record became kind of a college radio hit. It went into heavy rotation all over the country for about 6 months on all these stations. Up until then, Negativland had played occasionally live in the Bay Area, but we'd never toured. So we were thinking, maybe we've always wanted to tour. We weren't expecting to make money, but we thought, okay, there's enough interest in our work that maybe we can go out and we could take time off from our jobs and at least break even. So we arranged a whole tour, and it very quickly became apparent as the shows were coming together that we were going to lose so much money that we couldn't afford to do it, and we were going to actually have to cancel the tour. Well, as you could see from the work I'm showing you, we're increasingly, as we're reusing this media around us and asking questions of why are we doing it, what are we making by using this stuff, we're increasingly interested in how the media itself operates. It's just inevitably arising by doing this type of exploration. And Richard in our group, he was working at his graveyard shift security guard job, and he saw a newspaper article that in the New York Times that said that in Rochester, Minnesota, a teenage boy in the middle of the night had taken an axe and chopped up his mother, father, brother, and sister. A massacre. And that they were a devoutly religious family. There was some suggestions of arguments over religion or something, and Richard, who has a really dark, kind of fucked up sense of humor, and he was really bored at his job, he sits there and he starts writing a press release for immediate release. Negativland have been asked by federal authorities to cancel a long-planned 17-city tour pending an investigation into a possible connection between the quadruple axe murders in Rochester, Minnesota, and their song, Christianity is Stupid. And went on from there to, talk about what they were subliminal messages, backwards masking, a religious argument. The federal authorities didn't know. Well, he showed this to the group. We all kind of nervously laughed, like you just did. And then we said, well, actually, the truth. This is a lot more interesting than the truth, and we are really interested in how the media works. So why don't we put this out and just see what happens? Instead of just making work responding to the media, let's stick our own something into the media meat grinder and see what it does. Now, this is before the internet, right? So I think this would have all been found out like that. Couldn't do this in this day and age. But it went out, and within a month, a zine, some of you know what zines are, right? Or were, right? There was a zine in California, and it's interesting how much, you can see how these interesting things can sometimes arise at a very specific time, space, technologically intersections that don't exist anymore. Anyway, yes, a zine wrote about it and reproduced the press release kind of verbatim. Something I've learned from doing this now over the years is that journalists are either lazy or really, really busy, and so the more you do their job for them when you write a press release and you write it like an article, they just lift, all kinds of stuff from it. So, good tip, if you need to know that, if you don't already know. And anyway, it appeared in this zine, and then there was a California-based arts and entertainment magazine, long gone now, it was called BAM, and they wrote a big feature on the whole thing. And we talked to them and we said, how could it be true? How could music have anything to do with murders? It has to be a hoax, this is ridiculous, and they ran a whole a feature on the whole thing. So we thought, well, wow, this is getting interesting. But then, and at that point, we actually said, maybe we shouldn't talk to the media anymore. We should just let it play itself out and just refuse, just see what it does. Because we're interfering too much with our own experiment, right? But we broke that rule almost immediately because I was working as a preschool teacher. And see, whenever I tell this story, everyone, why is that funny? I don't know why that's funny. I don't know why that's funny. I'm actually really good with kids. Actually, if you know any of our work, there's one of our records has a recording of a little girl singing "Over the Rainbow" with the hiccups. It's adorable. It's so cute. Anyway, that's on, that came from me taking a tape recorder to work. So anyway, they came and knocked on the door of the classroom, and they said, "Mark, come over here. There's a call from a CBS News guy who wants to talk to you. What is that about?" And I've said, I don't, no idea. But of course I knew what it had to be about. And I went up to the main office, luckily no one was in there, and it was KPIX, Channel 5, Evening Eyewitness News. It was the CBS News affiliate in the San Francisco Bay Area. They had seen the BAM magazine article, so they knew this had to be true. And they wanted to talk to us about this story. And sitting there thinking, oh my God, I've never quite been in this position before. What do I do? How do I handle it? How do I play this guy? I luckily chose the right response. I said, oh, no, we don't want to talk to you. We're being accused of just trying to use this to publicize our group, and our life has, just been horrible since this happened. We don't want to talk to you because you're just gonna sensationalize it. So this was perfect because it sucked him right in, because he was saying, oh no, we're the news, we're objective, we want to tell your side of the story, and we're not going to sensationalize it, and you can trust me, I'm the media. So I reluctantly agreed that we would talk to them, right? And so I hung up the phone, called up the rest of Negativland, and I said, oh my God, the Channel 5 Eyewitness News van is going to show up in 2 hours at our rehearsal studio. What the hell do you want to do, And so we got over to the studio. We set up to kind of be like a band. Now, I don't think Negativland actually is a band. We pretend to be one because it's an interesting way to get our work out into the world, right? And I've always liked the very egalitarian, accessible nature of music, CDs, concert halls, and all that kind of stuff, right? It's cheap, and now, of course, it's free. You don't have to pay for any music. So that's always had a great appeal, to take a kind of an more intellectual, artsy sort of approach, but put it out into the world in this very accessible way. Anyway, so we set up to kind of play for them and act like a band, and we knew they were going to want footage for color to use, in the interview. And they came over, and I know when they were, I felt sure that they were going to make us out to be strange. And so when they were filming me playing the bass, I picked up a drumstick and started playing the bass guitar with a drumstick, thinking, well, they'll like that. It looks weird, And we were talking to them on camp. They're going to only use a soundbite or two, right? But so we were talking to them about how the media doesn't check its facts. They base their news stories on other news stories. Who knows what is real, what is fiction, and Hal Eisner, the reporter who was there interviewing us, turned to Don Joyce of Negativland, and he said, this whole thing with this whole story is so bizarre. It almost does seem like it's a hoax. And there was this sort of moment where I wondered what Don was going to say, and Don looked at Hal and he said, "It is a hoax." And then Don said, "I'm just kidding." So Hal was very relieved to know that he was not a hoax after all. So they went away with their footage, and we gathered around our warm TV set to see what was going to happen next. Well, it turned out it was a really slow news day in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we were the top story of the hour. And so I'm going to show you now what happens when you decide to do, follow an impulse like this. This is the broadcast.
Good evening. Topping night casts a possible link between murder and music.
Music performed by a rock group right here in the Bay Area.
4 members of a Midwestern family were murdered. The 16-year-old son is the prime suspect. Members of the experimental rock group Negativland have been drawn into the case, and prosecutors won't even tell them for certain that how their music might be involved. Hal Eisner has our report.
It was the kind of murder case that friends and neighbors said didn't make sense. They didn't understand how an A student from a good family could murder his brother, sister, and parents with an axe.
He was not a homicidal maniac. He did not show any signs of wanting to hurt anyone.
David Braun was accused in the multiple axe slayings, but now almost 3 months later, many are still wondering why. One explanation may involve a Bay Area music group called Negativland. Negativland's music is highly critical of the mass media, nuclear war, and handguns. The group thinks their music is humorous, but they don't find it a bit funny that one of their songs poking fun at religion may have sparked a dispute among the Brahms, triggering the murders. They say federal authorities asked them to cancel a long-planned 17-city tour and eliminate live performances until the conclusion of the investigation. The probe apparently involved their song, Christianity is Stupid.
Christianity is stupid. Christianity is stupid.
It's hard to listen to the cut and not laugh. If you have any sense of humor at all, or whatever, it's hard not to see the humor, and that it would result in anything as serious as this, I think is ridiculous.
This isn't the first time controversial music has been linked to tragedy. Charles Manson said his murder spree was influenced by the Beatles' Helter Skelter. It's believed Night Stalker suspect Richard Ramirez was influenced by AC/DC's Highway to Hell album. An Ozzy Osbourne song, Suicide Solution, became the focal point of an actual suicide case involving a Southern California teenager.
What you can say is that music is a bystander involved to a certain degree, but most unlikely that it generated the mayhem. If it did, there'd be a lot more mayhem around.
Meanwhile, the members of Negativland are hoping for a speedy conclusion to the Brahm case in Minnesota and eventually a return to their live performances and a career that after 9 years had finally taken some positive turns.
But a quick end to the bizarre murder case may be in doubt. A Minnesota judge has ruled that David Brahm will face trial as a juvenile. The prosecutor wants Brahm tried as an adult, and he's appealing. I'm Hal Eisner, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
It'll be several months before the court decides whether to try David Brahm as a juvenile or an adult. The date for his murder trial can't be set until that decision is made. That means it's also not clear how long the band will be restricted from performing.
I still can't believe we did that. It's so, of course, as I heard you reacting, one of the things that was so funny about this is that anytime anyone wrote about it, they had to talk about the song, right? They had to use this phrase, Christianity is stupid. One of the wonderful things about what's happened with Pussy Riot in Russia is that everywhere they write about it, they say the name of the band, right? It's just Pussy, 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 Pussy all the time, which is just great. It's very funny. Anyway, this was also, for us, an incredible form of self-education. You know, you start to, obviously I've watched this clip many times, and if you listen to the guy's language, he has so many caveats. You know, he's saying, apparently, they claim, they say. You know, we all started to learn a new way to read the media. You know, when you hear that kind of language in any news report or read it in any article, you know you're being spun. And of course, going through this, you know, we started thinking, my God, if we could get away with this, what does this say about every piece of mainstream news that I read or, you know, or see out there? You know, how can we believe anything? Well, I don't think we can. So this was broadcast all over California, and a lot of people were watching this show, including my mom and my dad. and I got this hysterical phone call from my mother, you know, saying, Mark, oh my God, they can't pin this on you and your friends. This can't be true. You know, I'm saying, Mom, of course it's not true. We made it up. Of course they made it up. No, we made it up. What do you mean? And it took a long time to walk my mom through, you know, this idea that, no, we lied. The media actually is totally irresponsible. They really do base their stories on news stories, you know, all the time. I'm sure a lot of you know that there's an enormous amount of mainstream television news which is based on video press releases. They don't say that's what they are. I'm seeing many nodding heads, yeah, you know. But you're watching video press releases from corporations, from different AstroTurf, phony movements, things like that. If you're like me, and I have enough free time, and I don't happen to have kids, I mean, I actually do have the time to read many, many different news sources on any given story to try and sort of feel like I'm getting a picture of what the story might be. You know, so I go to Fox News all the time, and Al Jazeera, and CNN, and Common Dreams, and Truth Out. You know, go to all these different places. Fox is hard to read, but I do it. And you know, to get a sense of things. But most people don't have the time to do that, you know, understandably. And so they just get the little snippets they get from what's on the news in the background or what they see at the checkout counter at the grocery store. And, you know, that's why we we have an electorate that doesn't even know what the hell they're voting for. Anyway, so yes, this exploded in this way that, of course, we had no idea it was gonna do this, but it was sure as hell interesting that it was. And the next day, because this was on the TV, we got a call from the San Francisco Chronicle, which is the daily newspaper of the San Francisco Bay Area, and they wanted to report about it because they'd seen it on TV. And Richard said, well, no, Richard said, we aren't talking to you, and we really didn't. We said, we're not talking to you because we just got a rock thrown through our window. And of course, that was another lie. And that made it onto page 3 of the front page section of the paper. Local band under house arrest, under siege. So we're having these band meetings, to figure out what to do next. Now, the truth is, in case you're wondering, that as this was growing, we were becoming uncomfortable with part of the story, which is that there really was this horrific human tragedy that we were exploiting to see what the media would do. That part didn't interest us. We were interested just in how the media acted, but we were uncomfortable about that aspect of it. And so we decided that the responsible thing to do, of course, was to turn all of this into one big piece of conceptual art, of course, right? And so in honor of Hal Eisner, the reporter, his promise to not sensationalize the news broadcast, we made a record that we dipped into our archives, a lot of things from our weekly radio show, and made a kind of an audio collage, spoken word collage piece that was all about murder, music, and the media, which we called Helter Stupid. And I ended up making a record album, which later came out as a CD. So we learned a lot doing this, a lot. And I remember that up until this point, if we had any image at all out there in the music arts world, it was of being a bunch of kind of funny, nerdy, pointy-headed guys from the suburbs who do this, odd stuff. And now look, we have this dark, I remember after this happened, when we played live shows, we started getting kind of more of the Nine Inch Nails crowd, all dressed in black, and, we had a dark edge now. So I remember thinking, well, there's no way we'll ever top that. How could that be? But I was wrong. We finally did tour. We played up and down the West Coast, and we played a show in Portland. And after the show, a guy came up to us and handed us a cassette. Do you remember what those are? And he said, you guys, you got to hear this. You're going to love it. Now, what he had handed us was a bunch of outtakes of top 40 DJ Casey Kasem. How many know who this is? Lots of you. You're old enough to know. That's great. Yeah, I know. When I speak sometimes to like 18, 19-year-olds, I have to say, it's like the modern version. He was like Ryan Seacrest or something, because they don't know who he is. But he was also the voice of Scooby-Doo, and and Shaggy, and he was an animal rights activist, an anti-nuclear guy, interesting lefty Hollywood guy. He's actually one of the few folks in Hollywood who spoke out against the first invasion of Iraq in the early 90s. Anyway, Casey Kasem was having a very bad day, I guess, in the studio, and what he was doing was lots of takes. When you're the voice talent, you do a lot of takes over and over again because the engineer and the producer are going to edit it all together into the final version, right? So he's just going absolutely ballistic, apeshit, being a total asshole to the engineer, and I think the engineer's revenge was to release these tapes. Now nowadays, if this came out, it would hit the internets right away, and it would be all over the place. And we would not have been inspired to make it, but part of what inspired us was to make it was, one, it was pee your pants funny, and two, nobody had this. It was just hardly anyone out there had these tapes. He was trying to introduce a song by a group. He got the country they're from wrong, but it was a group that I know you've heard of because they've been around as long as Negativland has, but taken a slightly different career trajectory, and they're called U2. Do you know them? You do. Okay. So we thought, this is so great, Also, you find these wonderful artifacts of this detritus from American culture, and you kind of want to share them with people because they're just so astonishing, and amazing and curious and odd and so since he was trying to introduce a song by the band U2, we thought, well, why don't we use a U2 song a little bit? You know how when DJs come in and they talk over the instrumental opening of a song and then they drop out right as the vocal comes in? So we thought, why don't we kind of make it sound just like the beginning of a radio thing, and then it all devolves into something else. And it gradually evolved into two different versions of a U2 song that was still a hit at the time that was called I Still Haven't Found what I'm looking for. It's now, this is now old enough of a story that that song's on classic, it's a classic rock station song, but it wasn't then. And we actually found this kind of computer karaoke version where you could use the note data to arrange your own sounds to play the song. So we could use video game sound effects for the Edge's guitar riff and light bulb breaking instead of the drum fills, and we had fun with that. Kind of wondering what to call it, you know. We didn't want to call it I Still Haven't Found Her Looking For too long. We thought about, what if we just call it U, maybe -2? That's the U2 airplane, right? The band U2 doesn't have a dash. The U2 airplane, we were thinking, I still haven't found I'm looking for, and looking for things. This the U2 spy plane, you know, that kind of all went in a nice way. We found recordings of people we use in the record of people looking for things, including looking for obscenities in language, looking for things in their drawer, looking for things they lost. But in the end, we put the plane on the back, but we decided, wouldn't it be a fun design if we made the cover with the U2 really big, and Negativland really small. Can you see that? Now this is a good idea, right? Perhaps a risky idea, but it's a good idea. And I think that that's something that's always motivated Negativland. It's like when a good idea walks into the room, you know, you just have to say, come on in. You might destroy my life, but come on in. I think it's really important, you know, for us as people who make art and activism and all that. You know, you gotta go with those impulses, especially the crazy ones. And so we love the idea that this thing that would go into independently owned record stores and all over the country, it's something that is not what it appears to be. It's people are going to look at it and like, what, and have this incredibly strange encounter with an environment of a consumer environment, have this weird moment that you would never think you're going to have. We also incorrectly assumed that people would be smart enough to figure out what it was right away. So this record came out. It happened, and it really was and the most astonishing coincidence, truly, was that the release got delayed and delayed and delayed for just various mundane reasons. And when it finally came out, it was 1 month before U2's new album, Achtung Baby, was going to hit the stores. So you know how record labels release a single in advance of an album, right? I don't know if you all know this. Some of you know this. So it totally read, you know, that's the way it read, like, oh, advanced single, new U2 album, okay, great. So we heard that Tower Record made a huge display of it, in the front of their store, and you know, we sent out promo copies to radio stations, and we heard of DJs who did play the radio version first, and you know, weren't too happy about that. And you know, we just had such fun making this record. You know, everything we could think of that you're not supposed to do, we're doing that. You know, and as you know, there's, you know, I love art and music in all kinds of forms and genres and everything, but there is that smaller subset of people who make things who are, you know, this is a big part of what Isaiah is all about. It's people who are drawn to doing things that you're drawn to doing them because it seems like nobody's doing this. That's precisely why it's interesting, precisely. So Negativland certainly falls into that camp. And the record came out, and 10 days after it came out, we were hit with a 200-page lawsuit. And finally, we had been crushed, you know, by the man. And U2's record label, Island Records, and their publisher, Polygram, were suing us for, of course, copyright infringement, trademark infringement for using the U and the 2 the way we did, defamation of character for associating such terrible foul language with the clean-cut image of the band U2. When you do a cover version of a song, you don't have to get permission to do it, but if you change the lyrics, you do. We changed the lyrics. And so they sued us for everything you can imagine. It was Madonna's lawyer they hired, and they sued us, they sued the record label we were on, SST Records, and the shit was really hitting the fan. Before I go on, though, I want to actually play you the video we made to go along with this track I've been talking to you all about. And this is the one thing I am playing for you that really, truly, honest to God, is a piece of illegal art. So don't tell anyone you saw it here. This didn't happen. But this is side B of Negativland's U2 single. So let's look at that.
Now, we're up to our long-distance dedication. And this one is about kids and pets and a situation that we can all understand, whether we have kids or pets or neither. It's from a man in Cincinnati, Ohio. And here's what he writes. Dear Casey, this may seem to be a strange dedication request, but I'm quite sincere, and it'll mean a lot if you play it. Recently, there was a death in our family. He was a little dog named Snuggles, but he was most certainly a part of... Let's start again. From coming out of the record. Play the record, okay? Please. That's the letter U and the numeral 2. The four-man band features Adam Clayton on bass, Larry Mullen on drums, Dave Evans, nicknamed Pete Edge on... This is bullshit. Nobody cares. These guys are from England, and who gives a shit? Just a lot of wasted names that don't mean diddly shit. For sure. You don't know where you're at. This is bullshit. This is bullshit. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? Yeah, it is cool. Diddly shit. Diddly shit. Diddly shit. Diddly shit. Nobody cares. It's getting stronger all the time here. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. He was a little dog named Snuggles. This is American Top 40. This is American Top 40. This is bullshit. This is bullshit. concerted effort to come out of a record that isn't a fucking up-tempo record every time I do a goddamn death dedication. It's the last goddamn time I want somebody to use his fucking brain to not come out of a goddamn record that is, that's up-tempo, and I gotta talk about a fucking dog dying.
I gotta get full of shit. Who knows? Let me turn this shit down.
This is fucking ponderous, man. Ponderous, fucking ponderous. This is American Top 30, right here on the radio station you grew up with. Music Radio 138. Oh, fuck.
Fuck you, Richard. Fuck you, man. Fuck you, Richard. I'd love to, wouldn't you? I'm a nice kid, though.
He said shit so many times, we thought, okay, we'll just show some shit. But that got that banned on YouTube because you can't show that kind of stuff. But it was kind of funny. I was all filmed with a Super 8 camera. And I remember I was waiting for a prospective new roommate to come over and thinking, I hope I get this shot finished before they come over with the camera positioned over the toilet. They're gonna be too scared to move in with me. Anyway, I think that something that I think so interesting about collage is how much the meaning is made in your brain about what we're doing. Because you don't know why we pick something. You know, did we pick it because it's funny, creepy, smart, because we agree with it, disagree with it, it's humorous, it's poignant, it's hilarious, it's tragic, it's sad. Usually for Negativland, if it's 3, 4, or 5 of those things all at the same time, those are the things we're drawn to. We're drawn to the textures and the timbres of the things we find, not just the content. It continues to be a very, very interesting way to work. And here we were finally being financially and legally hammered because of following these creative impulses. Now, we'd always known that we were skirting the edge of legality in doing it. That was part of the appeal. But we also thought, naively, that we would just be ignored because we're just a tiny little nothing. Our records sell in the thousands, not the millions. And we really didn't anticipate something this major. We figured that if they were going to threaten us, they'd send a scary letter, one of those fake cease and desist sounding letters that they're huffing and puffing, and you better pull this or we're going to nail you. And then we would have decided what to do next. Instead, what we got was the lawsuit. They'd already gone to the judge. They'd already gone to court. And of course, we felt, this was I don't know, our come to Jesus moment or something, where we really had to look at everything we were doing, every aspect of how we worked, and say, well, do we want to keep fighting? This is now a fight, a real fight for our creative lives, if we want to keep working this way. So what do we want to do? We luckily all agreed that we're going to fight these guys. And in fact, because of what we'd been through with the Axe Murder hoax, we realized this is sort of horrific, but actually this is amazing because they've handed us an incredible opportunity to talk about this in a big way, because U2 this is back in 1991, U2 is the largest rock band on the planet Earth. And we felt like we're the canary in the coal mine. These issues about who owns ideas and intellectual property, there was something called electronic bulletin boards, right? Clearly, with Moore's Law and all that, the speed of computing, we could tell that, within a decade, there would be computers in most homes in America. The speed of computing would be so fast that, of course, people are going to get whole movies and songs. And these debates, which seem arcane and esoteric and all on the fringe, are going to really become mainstream. The shit will hit the fan. And so at that point, we'd only been hearing from very conservative viewpoints, managers and lawyers and all that. And we were saying, look, for us, an obvious argument. Look, if you're making anything creative, what else can you possibly respond to except the world you live in? Well, what's the world we live in? Well, it's not just birds and mountains and sky and trees. It's advertisements, it's pop songs, it's noise, it's media everywhere, obviously. So you're saying you privately own all that and that's off limits? Like, are you nuts? Did you ask my permission to put up that stupid Pepsi billboard, in the middle of the landscape? No, you didn't. I'm not going to ask your permission to take it from you. I think this is a pretty obvious argument, I'm sure, to most people in this room. But at that time, we felt that we had this amazing opportunity to make that argument, because the news media, in its pretending to be objective, would have to present our side, at least sort of. And we could talk about this larger issue, about the corporate, control and privatization of absolutely everything, and how this was having some really dangerous effects. And that's just in the arts. I mean, if you look at how intellectual property issues are, applied within medicine, if you could invent a drug that cures AIDS and claim, charge enormous amounts of money for it when it actually costs you pennies to manufacture, but you can do that because of the way the intellectual property laws are rigged, well, there's a moral problem there, because the lives are at stake that are more important than your profit. That's not quite how America works, unfortunately, so it's a problem. We ended up publishing a book that documented the whole crazy story. See, this is all an infomercial. It actually tells the story using the actual stuff. It's all the behind-the-scenes dirt that you're never supposed to see. It's the actual lawsuits, the press releases, the faxes, the phone calls, all this stuff. We ended up hearing from U2's producer, Brian Eno. We ended up with an overzealous fan of ours getting a hold of Casey Kasem's home phone number and leaving threatening messages on his home phone over some of these issues. And Casey called federal authorities, and we got investigated by the FBI for real. And that's all in here. We managed to trick The Edge, U2's guitarist, into an interview. We said we were working for Mondo 2000 magazine, and revealed halfway through the interview who we actually were. That's all in here too. A lot of really funny stuff. But we've also felt that there was a way. I guess that's what I didn't quite finish saying, was that there was a way that when you collage things together, in the end, it really, I feel like it's very respectful of the audience, because you really get to sort of get everyone's perspective, and you can draw your own conclusions about these issues. That thing ended up being has been used as a college textbook a lot too, which has been incredibly gratifying for us. So I'm going to show you one last video, and then we'll go to some Q&A. I think, in that book, we made an audio collage about audio collage. Getting very meta here. And so we decided that since the book, which is called Fair Use, the story of the letter U in the numeral 2, and it has the fair use provisions in the Copyright Act is in the front of the book, and we thought, what better place, what's perhaps, we hope, safer place to actually appropriate from people like, say, Walt Disney. And so we ended up finding this song from Walt Disney's The Little Mermaid. And of course, Disney's made an empire on reusing intellectual property that isn't in copyright. If we had intellectual property laws hundreds of years ago the way we do now, then the estate of Hans Christian Andersen would be suing them for making their movies. Did you know that our national anthem, the melody, is stolen from an English drinking song? How many of you know that? You people are so smart. I couldn't believe that when I found that out. Like, wow, oh my God, basis of our country, thievery. Where was I? Oh, so anyway, yes, we wanted to use this Little Mermaid song. If you know it, could you join with me? Look at this stuff. Isn't it neat? Wouldn't you think my collection's complete? Wouldn't you think I'm a girl who has, you know it, everything? If I'm doing this talk to 20-year-olds, they all know it. You would have been more impressed. The whole audience would join in. Anyway, yes, so we felt just like Ariel, the Little Mermaid. This stuff is just neat. We want to use it and do things with it and make things out of it. And so we ended up using The Little Mermaid. We had a recording of a friend of ours being threatened over the telephone by a record executive he was going to sue her. And we had a recording of that. Now, I can make a fair use claim on just about everything we appropriate, but that recording is just wiretapping. It's illegal, and but no one cares about that anymore, right? Wiretapping's fine. Yeah, isn't it? God, it's a whole other conversation. I think there's something so interesting going on right now with social media, because a generation is growing up who have no notion of privacy the way most of us in the room grew up with. We have these what are now very weird, outmoded, outdated notions of privacy that just are kind of innate and ingrained in us. But if you're growing up where you're just, I remember when I first bopped around on MySpace and you'd see things like, well, this kid is talking about the drugs and sex they had over the weekend, just on a public place where everyone can read it, and that's just normal now. Okay, wow. So this generation isn't going to care about our government illegally wiretapping people because they all just put everything out there anyway. Sorry, that's just a strange aside, but. Anyway, so we used Disney's The Little Mermaid. Yes, we were using a recording of this record executive threatening to sue someone. We had a source from a TV episode of a show called Wise Guy that was about the music industry. We used some chunks of a Dean Martin song, and it morphs into a cover version of Black Flag, which was a punk rock band, and SST Records, the record label we were on that put out the U2 record, was founded by the guitarist of Black Flag, who ended up also suing us. I forgot to mention that we not only got sued for putting out the record, but we got sued for putting out a magazine that was about being sued for putting out the record. That's when it got really exciting. So we thought, in honor of Mr. Greg Ginn, who sued us, we did a cover version of the Black Flag punk rock song "Gimme, Gimme, Gimme." Some of you may know it. And it all turned and morphed into a little audio piece we called "Gimme the Mermaid." We then met an animator in Los Angeles who was a fan of our work, who has since become a satellite member of our group. We've worked with him a lot. His name is Tim Maloney, and Tim worked for Disney at the time in the building where they were doing Little Mermaid animated Saturday morning cartoon show. So we said, "Tim, you know how to draw the Ariel? You have access to all this amazing equipment, like we should work together." So this is one of my favorite shorts that we've done. This is all made on Disney's dime, without their knowledge, and generated on their computers. And so please enjoy my final little showing here of "Gimme the Mermaid."
Talking about whether it's convenient to you. I'm talking about over-breath in this log.
Hello, Dead Dog Records.
Listen to the current recording.
Current recording?
The one you're making as we speak.
Hold on. Bet you guys are listening to everything.
Bugs in there for protection.
I know.
You either have no ability to use this for any purpose whatsoever, either for free or for money. You want to test me in the court? If we did not buy ownership, we bought exclusivity. And if you want to try and check me out, and you go ahead and try and do something with it, and I'm going to sue your ass. You can never use it without our permission.
Maybe he's right.
So I sent you the check. I own it or I control it. You can never use it for anything without my permission. And if you want to challenge me, we'll go to court tomorrow, and I'll prove you wrong. And you want to find out? Let's go.
Maybe he's right.
I'm telling you the facts of law and the facts of reality here. The reality is I gave you money, I own it, or I control it. If you want to try and do something with it, I'm going to sue you. You never use it for any purpose again, or I will sue you.
Maybe he's right.
I own the copyright stuff. Go get a lawyer right now. Let's have it out. I am not going to mess around with you about this. You can't use it without my permission for anything forever. Got it? Get a lawyer, because you're going to need one.
Maybe he's right. Maybe there is something the matter with me.
I'm going to sue your ass.
I just don't see how a world that makes such wonderful things could be bad.
You want to test me in the court?
Look at this stuff.
I own it.
Isn't it neat?
I control it.
Wouldn't you think my collection's complete?
Want to find out?
Wouldn't you think I'm the girl who has everything? Look at this trove.
I own it.
Treasures untold. How many wonders can one cavern hold?
I'm telling you.
Looking around everything.
I own it.
Sure.
I control it.
She's got everything. I've got gadgets and gizmos aplenty.
You want to challenge me?
I've got booze-its and what's-its galore. You want thingamabobs? I got 20. But who cares? No big deal. I want more.
gimme. I need some more. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Don't ask what for. Gimme, gimme, gimme. I need some more. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Don't ask what for. Gimme, gimme, gimme. I need some more. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Don't ask what for. Gimme, gimme, gimme. I need some more. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Don't ask what for. Gimme, gimme, gimme. I need some more. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Don't ask what for. Gimme, gimme, gimme. I need some more. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Don't ask what for. Give it to me. Gimme, 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 going out like that.
Try in the back of modernism and all this international law to make profit out of his own ungenerosity to humankind.
Thanks. So that's a little bit about just scratching the surface of all of the crazy stuff my friends and I have been doing the last 30 years. So thank you for coming very much. And I wanted to thank Andrea Pauli and Susan Sparge and Teresa and Jenny, who have all worked with me to get me out here. So I want to thank them very much too. As I said, I'll be doing a crazy noise performance thing at somewhere inside a hotel, I guess, tomorrow. It's in I can't remember, the Franciscan or something. But I have a few minutes to take some questions. And of course, also would urge you throughout the festival, to pin me down and talk to me about stuff too. But yeah, if there's any questions, I could take a few. Yes?
So you guys really seem to fly along this sort of moment where you can say something really interesting, and then also it could be like devastating to you at the same time, whether it's being sued or whatever. I was curious if you thought about how you might reappropriate a recent trailer for a movie that has gotten a lot of attention in the Middle East.
Too obvious. We actually do have these discussions where we think about our work being not too time specific. It's like, for years, there were 8 years of people saying, God, you got to do something with George Bush. He talks so slowly, he's so easy to rearrange. But actually, it's just like, that's like shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, the guy already was his own walking parody. I mean, you didn't, and that kind of stuff really dates horribly. So it's not something we ended up doing. The most recent really big project we did was we on and off for the last 5 years, we toured a show called It's All in Your Head FM, and it was where we approached the subject of God, and we actually were looking at why do humans believe in God, what are the problems this is causing us, and we tried to create a show that wasn't, obviously, our audience is going to be people like you, so we're trying to say, what can we do that takes an audience like this, that is maybe not very religious, that is already intellectual, that's very left of center, and pushes them to a place that is uncomfortable and interesting and leaves them at the end of the night asking questions and thinking about stuff. So that was a really interesting challenge to pull that off. So we had to make a show that was first and foremost super challenging to us. Currently, our current performing show, which my thing tomorrow is related to, is actually pure sound. It's been confusing the hell out of our fans. We're using only our homemade electronic noisemakers we call boopers, which are feedback boxes, all the analog stuff. We're not interested in working with laptop performances. Do your email, but it's not. I mean, laptops are fantastic with what you can do with them, but as a performance thing, I'm utterly uninterested. I want to see people doing stuff, using real things and knobs and switches and manipulating things. But that's just me. But yeah, anyway, our current show is all boopers all the time. And completely improvised, which we've never done before either. So every show is very different. So that's been scary as hell for us to do. But I think whenever you put yourself in a place where you are uncomfortable and you're kind of scared, if you're continuing to try and evolve as a creative person, that's exactly where you should be. So, but yeah, the video you mentioned is certainly really interesting stuff. I don't know what you could do with it. So I'm curious how it's going to be looked at over time, too, historically. Or if it's a feature, right? All that's come out is this really long trailer, so where's the feature? Is it going to come out? You know, it's going to be like the greatest B movie ever made. Yes, Steve.
Do you feel like that quest to find an uncomfortable place for yourselves is what led you to do this Booper thing, you know, away from appropriation into pure sound because you can no longer get people to sue you over is that kind of part of the motivation?
You know, that's an interesting question. I would say probably intuitively yes, consciously no. But our intuition. I mean, one of the things that happened was that when we got sued and we made this huge stink, you know, there was a lot of reasons to do it. We had our walking the high road reasons to educate the public, to get a discourse going. But the selfish reasons were like, you know what? If I can't change the law, I want Negative Land to so thoroughly embarrass and humiliate these people who sued us that we can at least carve out a space where they leave us alone. Because I want to keep making this work. I don't want to let it have a chilling effect on us. And we were very successful in doing that. I've met lots of people in the mainstream music industry in the 90s that would just say, oh no, no one's going to touch you now. You're off limits because you don't make any money and you're just going to, if we sue you, you'll turn it into an art project. So, I mean, shit. When Island Records, we shipped them back thousands of copies of the CD and the vinyl, and of course, everyone who worked there just took them home with them, you know. So that was part of our idea and also we hoped that we could continue to do work that set examples that said, look, whether you like what we're doing or not, we hope that you can see that this is interesting and is worth existing. You know, you don't need to. It's no threat to anyone. We're not hurting anyone's bottom line. Actually, that whole argument is just specious, right? So, but especially with the ascendancy of girl talk and all that appropriation, and from where I'm coming from personally, I can't speak for the rest of Negative Land. We all have different ideas on this, but for me personally, it is not as interesting because it's so entered into the mainstream, and it's such a prickly thing. So, I guess for now it's boopers. We boop. Together we boop. Was there another handy hand anywhere? Yes? No? Wow. Okay. Oh, yes? Go ahead. One more. They knew the lyrics because of our video. That's nice. Oh, that's sweet. Thanks. That's great. I like the Little Mermaid Disney movie. I think it's great, actually. Anyway, okay, I think we're going to wrap it up, and there's a zillion more things to all see, say, and do at the festival. I'll see you all around, and like I said, please come up and talk to me if you want to about whatever. Thanks. Wait! I want to show one last funny thing. This is a great example of, I don't even know what this is because it's not really a collage. It's all made of one single thing, just rearranged. So what is it? But you don't play the track, but you're probably going to skip the track and go to the one after. Is this DVD still in there, Dominic? Yes, the next track after this. It's really short. But no, if you want to hit skip you want to hit advance to a track, you're doing fast forward. Like there's a track advance, chapter advance. There you go.
Raindrops on kittens and schnitzel on roses. Nose cream on my nose, whiskers and crisp eyelashes with noodles. Wild geese that fly with their wings tied up with strings. These are a few of my favorite things. Ponies and dresses and warm doorbells and brown raindrops. Girls with blue whiskers tied up with noodles. Wild kettles that fly with bright copper wings. These are a few of my favorite things. The dog bites, the bee stings. I simply remember my favorite things, and then I feel so bad. lashes, sting on colored girls tied up with blue satin sashes, wild brown girls tied up in warm strings, wild white girls that melt into nose cream. These are a few of my favorite things. Nose cream on ponies, nose cream on kittens, nose cream on roses and nose cream on mittens. Bells and 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 wild geese. When